Hey guys, it's JC with All Things Home. Welcome back to our channel. In this video, I'm taking you through the process of how I flipped a dresser for our daughter's nursery. If you enjoy this video, please go ahead and like it below and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next video. Let's go ahead and get started. Found this dresser on Facebook Marketplace for around $100, and I was really looking for a solid wood dresser that was 60 inches or less in width, was mostly a traditional style, and also had dovetail drawers like this one, which just shows the drawers were well constructed. I started by wiping down the entire dresser just since it was used and had dust in the drawers. I went ahead and started vacuuming each drawer with a little help, and then continued to wipe everything down. After cleaning the inside of the drawers, I did go ahead and remove the hardware at this point since I knew I wasn't going to be reusing it, and that way I could wipe down the exterior of the drawers as well. Final step in cleaning the dresser was just to spray and clean the inside. There was still a lot of dust, so I just wanted to get it as clean as possible. This dresser ended up being a little shorter than I was hoping for, so I wanted to remove these legs and add a different base to give it a few more inches. I found an easy base tutorial online, so please feel free to research one yourself. This is just kind of a quick walkthrough of how I did this one, but there are different videos that go into further detail of how to do it. Luckily, these legs were easy to remove just by removing the screws and kind of popping them off. You can see there are these extra wood pieces on the sides for support. You can save these to use for the future base. I ended up not using them just because my base was a little bit thicker, so I didn't need them. Now I'm just taking exact measurements for the base. I want the new base to be right on the edge of the dresser bottom, so I'm just making sure everything is accurate before I cut the pieces. I bought 1x1s from Home Depot for the base, and now I'm just using my miter saw to cut them that my husband got for me as a gift, so thank you to him. Now this wood is pine wood because it is all that I could find, but a stronger wood would be a little bit better just because pine can be easy to strip. I didn't have any issues, but if you are worried about that, then getting something a little bit stronger would be better. So after cutting each of the 4 sides for the base, I'm now measuring for each leg. So now I'm just going to angle the front legs a little bit. I saw this in the base tutorial, and this way it'll just give those front legs just a little bit more character, so it doesn't just have that square edge, but you can totally leave the square edge if you prefer. So here is just the layout of the base, and now I will start putting it together. So to start, I'm going to be creating my own pocket holes, which they do have guides and kits that you can get on places like Amazon, and those would help you to easily create a pocket hole. I didn't feel like buying one since I don't flip furniture very often, so I again found a tutorial on how to create your own pocket tools, which this worked perfectly fine for me since they weren't visible at all, being underneath and on the inside of the base. You can search for a tutorial on this that will give you a better description on how to do it, but basically you start going straight down for a certain amount of length, and then you start angling your drill from there. Okay, before attaching your pieces together, don't forget to place wood glue in between. Mine was almost out, so that's why the cap is off. I am just using as much as I can. So now I'm going to screw the pieces together. This is where with the pine, I read that some people had some issues with the wood stripping as far as using pine. So I just kind of went in slow to make sure I couldn't hear or see any of the wood stripping at all, and I did not have any issues. Once both screws were in, I did go back to each of them and just tighten them a little bit further, and then flipped it over, and I did notice it still was a little bit loose, so again went back and put a little bit more pressure to tighten further. I just wanted to show here that I did go ahead and add a brace and an extra leg in the middle. Since I know I will be having my daughter on top, changing her diapers, and she'll be getting bigger over time, I wanted to add some extra support. Now, moving to the drawer fronts, I'm going to start filling in these original hardware holes, and for this project I went in using plastic wood to fill the holes, and it didn't really matter what color because I was going to end up painting the whole dresser anyway. If I could go back, I would probably add some sort of wood inside the holes. I know I have seen like a toothpick trick just to give it a little bit more structure, and that way the plastic wood doesn't really need to fill the entire hole. Not that this didn't work, but I just used a rag to kind of fill in the plastic wood into the holes. I would recommend using a putty knife just to kind of get it a little bit smoother. Not that it needed to be really, since I was going to go back with the sander anyway, but I think it just would have helped fill the holes a little bit better. I did go back and do a second coat just to make sure they were overfilled before sanding. That way I could get them as smooth as possible with the rest of the drawer front. I also wanted to note that I wasn't worried about sanding it down any further since I was just going to be painting over it. Then I went back with a wet rag. You could definitely use a vacuum just to vacuum all the dust up, but if not, definitely make sure your rag is wet just to make sure that dust doesn't go airborne. You don't want to be breathing that in. Okay, almost to painting. Two more things. Here I am just measuring for the hardware. I'm finding the center of the drawer and kind of going off of the original hardware holes. I have two different hardware holes, and this one has 2 holes on it, so I just want to make sure I get them the proper distance apart. And a good trick is to use painter's tape. Whoops. Painter's tape is so helpful when it comes to this, just because you can mark where your holes are and then use those markings to drill your holes when you're ready. So now I'm just going to mark the middle on the painter's tape just so I can have that for reference. I was originally measuring this on the inside, but it just made way more sense to view it on the outside and then drill the holes from there. Not that this is the perfect way to do this, but I just used my little leveler to try and get those 2 dots as level as possible. Then I just went for it and drilled the holes for the hardware. I actually used this same piece of tape as well for the other drawers. I wanted to see what the hardware looked like and make sure it was pretty level, so I just went ahead and put it on just to see what it looked like. Then, I'm not going to lie to you, for the hardware that just had 1 hole, I went ahead and just eyeballed it using the original hardware holes. One last spray down, and I'm going to then flip it over and start attaching the base. I checked each side multiple times because I wanted to make sure it was in the proper spot before I placed any screws. Then I just screwed straight into the base and into the dresser using construction screws. Why can't I say that? Construction screws. Wow. If you can say that 5 times fast, please let me know in the comments. I clearly cannot. Anyway, it was recommended to use pocket holes to screw the base into the dresser, but because I knew that it wasn't going to be visible, then I just screwed them straight from the bottom of the base and into the dresser. As far as how many screws I ended up using, I really just judged it off of how secure I felt it was and made sure there weren't any spaces between the base and the dresser. Okay, finally to paint. In the past, I have used Rust-Oleum's Linen White. However, they didn't have any at the store, so I opted for Bear's white base, which was a little bit more stark, but it ended up being okay. I went ahead and did the frame of the dresser first, and then went to the drawers and did a total of 2 solid coats, and then just went back and touched up any spaces that I thought needed it. I used a roller for the majority of the dresser, and then also used a smaller brush to get in those smaller detail areas. it's hard to tell in this lighting, but the dresser did have a little bit of texture to it after I painted, so I wanted to go ahead and try to sand a little bit of that down. Also, to help this, you could sand in between each coat after it dries, just to make sure everything's a little bit smoother. For the top coat, I went in with this General Finishes Flat Out Flat top coat, and this is for medium traffic areas, so I figured this would be good for the dresser since it's not like a dining table or anything like that. Definitely wanted to note that it does say that it can yellow over time, so I was a little nervous to use it over white paint. However, I went and looked at the reviews online and nobody seemed to have any issues, but feel free to use at your own risk. I can say that as long as it was used in thin layers and didn't have globs left over like this one, it didn't dry any yellower. I did have one spot where I missed a glob like this and it dried pretty yellow, so just make sure to double check everywhere and use thin layers. One thing that I didn't love about this dresser was how the drawers pull out and that it was missing drawer stoppers. I knew I didn't want to run the risk of one of my kids pulling the drawers out and it landing on top of them. So for now, I just got these drawer stoppers off of Amazon, and you just hammer them into the back of each drawer. You can see from this angle that the drawer slides are just a rectangle instead of a T-shape. If they were a T-shape, then the drawers wouldn't really lean forward once they are pulled out, so that can be something to look for. Okay, so the last step is to add the hardware. Like I said, I got 2 different hardware pulls just to give it a little bit more interest. I will link both of these below. Now just adding the final piece, we are wrapping up this dresser, and here is the final result. I think the only thing I would change is that the old hardware holes are still a little bit visible, so instead of just adding the wood filler to the holes, I would actually expand the wood filler on the drawer front and sand from there. But otherwise, I'm just so happy with how it turned out, and it looks so good in our daughter's nursery. And that wraps up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching and it inspired you to flip some furniture of your own. Be sure to check out the full nursery reveal that I will link above when it is available. If you enjoyed watching, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on budget-friendly home decor and design tips and DIY projects. See you next time.